Adam had always enjoyed the peaceful solitude of his life on the distant colony. The colony, small but functional, was nestled in the valley of a barren, rocky world far from the bustling cities of Earth. Adam, a young human engineer, worked to maintain the energy grid that powered the settlement, ensuring that the residents could live in comfort despite the harsh surroundings. He liked the routine, waking up early, working through the day, and enjoying the quiet at night. It was a simple life, but it was his life. He had no close friends in the colony, choosing instead to keep to himself. After all, he wasn't one to need the company of others. That was until one cold evening when everything changed. It had been a typical day. Adam was finishing up his last task of the evening, repairing a section of the power lines that had been damaged by a recent storm. The wind howled, pushing the cold through the metal structures, and he was eager to finish his work and get back to the warmth of his small cabin. But as he was packing up his tools, a sound caught his attention. A soft knock at his door. Adam frowned, not expecting any visitors. Who would come all the way out here to see him? The only people who ever came to his cabin were the occasional supply truck driver or the colony's maintenance crew. But this was different. This knock was gentle, almost pleading. He walked over to the door, and before he could open it fully, a voice called out from the other side. "Please," the voice said, "I need help." Adam hesitated. The voice sounded strained, almost desperate. He opened the door slowly, and what he saw made him take a step back. Standing in front of him was a woman, but not like anyone he had seen before. She was tall, her skin shimmering with an otherworldly glow, a deep blue that reminded him of the distant stars in the night sky. Her eyes were large, darker than anything he had ever seen, and they seemed to hold a deep sadness. Her hair, long and silver, flowed like a curtain down her back, moving gently despite the wind. The woman wore clothing that Adam couldn't recognize, elegant, but in a way that seemed foreign to his eyes. The fabric shimmered in the dim light, rippling like liquid as she shifted slightly. "My name is Kira," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I am in need of your help." Adam blinked, unsure of what to say. She wasn't human, that much was clear. He had heard stories of the many alien species that inhabited this part of the galaxy, but he had never met one in person. The shock of seeing her standing there at his door was almost too much to comprehend. "Help?" he finally managed, his voice a little rough from the confusion. "What do you need?" Kira's eyes met his, and for a moment, Adam felt an unsettling sense of vulnerability. She was different, her presence almost overpowering in its intensity. He had been alone for so long that he wasn't used to anyone, let alone an alien, standing so close to him. I lost everything," Kira said, her voice catching slightly. "My home, my people, my children. We have nowhere to go." Adam frowned, trying to piece together what she was saying. "Your children?" he repeated. "Yes," Kira nodded. "They are very young and fragile. I need your help to ensure their survival. My people. We do not survive well in cold climates. My children are sick. Without help, they will not make it." Adam's mind raced. What was he supposed to do? He wasn't a doctor, and he wasn't equipped to care for alien children. But her desperation, the look of worry in her eyes, made something stir inside him. He couldn't turn her away. "I don't know how I can help you," Adam said, his voice hesitant. "I'm just a technician. I don't have medical training." Kira's eyes softened, and she took a small step forward. "I don't ask for much," she said quietly. "Just a place for my children to rest, warmth for them to survive. I can take care of the rest. You are the only one who can help us." "Please." Adam felt a strange pull toward her, a need to help despite his fears and uncertainty. He had always been a solitary person, never seeking the company of others. But something about Kira's plea reached deep inside him, and he found himself nodding, though he didn't fully understand why. "All right," he said, his voice steadying. "You can stay for a while, but I can't promise much beyond that." Kira's face softened into what could only be described as relief. "Thank you," she whispered. "I will not forget your kindness." Without waiting for him to say anything else, Kira stepped inside, her children in tow. The two small figures that followed her into the cabin were fragile-looking, almost translucent in their appearance. Their skin was a pale lavender, their eyes large and wide, full of a silent curiosity. Adam could tell they were frightened, though they made no sound. They clung to their mother's side, their tiny hands gripping the fabric of her clothing. Adam closed the door behind them, feeling a wave of responsibility settle over him. His life, which had been so simple and predictable, was about to change forever. "Thank you," Kira said again, turning to face him. "I know this is not easy for you, but I promise you, I will not be a burden." Adam nodded, though he wasn't sure what to expect. "We'll figure it out," he said, the words feeling strange as they left his mouth. Kira smiled, a gentle, grateful smile that made Adam feel a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. He had made the decision to help, and now, as he looked at her and her children, he knew that there would be no turning back. The quiet life he had once known was gone, but perhaps, just perhaps, this new path would be the one he had been meant to follow all along. Adam woke up early the next morning, the pale light of the alien sun casting long shadows across his cabin. The night had been quiet, but his sleep had been restless. Thoughts of Kira and her children kept him awake. He wasn't sure why he had agreed to let them stay, but now that they were here, he knew he had to do his best to help them. His life had changed in a way he hadn't expected. As he stood up and stretched, he could hear soft noises coming from the other room. He walked toward the small kitchen where Kira was already up preparing something. Her movements were graceful, despite the exhaustion in her eyes. Her children, who had been quiet the night before, were now awake too. They were playing with small, strange-looking toys in the corner. "Good morning," Adam said softly, not wanting to disturb the calm atmosphere too much. Kira turned and smiled at him, her face showing the kind of gratitude that made Adam feel both uncomfortable and touched. "Good morning," she replied. "Thank you for allowing us to stay here. I hope we didn't disturb you." "No," Adam shook his head. "It's all right. I was just thinking." Kira nodded as though she understood. She looked at her children, who had stopped playing and were now staring at Adam with wide, curious eyes. The little ones seemed to sense that he was someone important to their survival, but they didn't yet know him. Adam felt a strange sense of responsibility in their gaze, and it was both overwhelming and humbling. "I need to check on the power grid," Adam said, trying to break the tension. "Make sure everything is working fine for the colony. You and the kids can stay here. I'll be back in a few hours." Kira gave a small, understanding nod, but her eyes lingered on him for a moment longer than usual. "Thank you," she said quietly. The cold air outside hit Adam's face as he stepped out of the cabin. The wind had picked up during the night, and now the sky was a soft gray with clouds hanging low in the distance. The colony wasn't far, but the walk would take him at least an hour. He didn't mind. It gave him time to think. He had lived in isolation for years. He never asked for company, never sought out relationships. His life had been simple, and that was how he liked it. But now, with Kira and her children in his home, everything had changed. He wasn't sure what to make of it. Kira wasn't just an alien in need of help. She was something more. Her strength, her calm presence, and the way she cared for her children had made an impression on him. It was hard to ignore the way she seemed to move with such purpose and grace, as though she was used to taking charge of difficult situations. Adam admired her for that, but he also wondered how much she had been through to get to this point. As Adam reached the power grid station, he began to focus on his work, checking the connections and making sure everything was running smoothly. His mind was still distracted, but he knew that there was nothing he could do to change the situation. Kira and her children were depending on him, and he had made a promise to help them. After a few hours, Adam returned to the cabin. Kira and her children were waiting for him inside. The children were playing again, their laughter filling the space, though it was quiet and sweet. Kira was sitting near the fire, her eyes watching the children with a loving gaze. "How did it go?" Kira asked, her voice soft but steady. "The grid is fine. Everything is working as it should," Adam replied. He sat down at the table, trying to ignore the strange feeling he had in his chest. "How about you? How are the kids doing?" "They are better," Kira said, nodding. "They are adjusting to the warmth here. I can feel them growing stronger already. Thank you for that." Adam wasn't sure what to say. He had done so little, but Kira's gratitude made him feel like he had done something important. It was a strange feeling, one he wasn't used to. It felt good to be needed, but it also made him uncomfortable. He had spent so much of his life avoiding any kind of responsibility, but now it was all on him. As the day passed, Kira began to show Adam how she could help around the cabin. She was quick to pick up on the tasks, and despite not being familiar with human tools, she showed an impressive skill with her hands. Adam was surprised by her ability to adapt. She worked efficiently, her movements precise and purposeful. She helped him with repairs around the cabin, and when it was time to cook, she prepared a meal for him and the children. It was unlike anything Adam had ever tasted, the flavors rich and complex. It wasn't just the food that impressed him, but the care she put into everything she did. She wasn't just surviving, she was making this place feel like home. By the time evening arrived, Adam had grown more accustomed to their presence. The cabin, once quiet and empty, now felt full. The children's laughter and Kira's calm voice made the space feel alive. Adam realized, for the first time in a long while, that he didn't feel so alone anymore. That night, as Adam lay in bed, he couldn't help but think about how quickly his life had changed. Kira and her children had come into his world unexpectedly, and now they were a part of it. He still wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was clear. He couldn't imagine turning back now. In the silence of the room, Adam felt a sense of peace. It wasn't the same peace he had known before, but it was a peace that came with something more. The uncertainty of the situation, the strange feeling of responsibility, and the unexpected bond forming between him and Kira. It all made the future feel uncertain, but it also made it feel worth facing. For the first time in a long while, Adam wasn't just surviving. He was living, and maybe, just maybe, he was starting to find something more. Days passed, and life in the cabin became more routine. Adam had begun to adjust to having Kira and her children in his home. At first, everything felt unfamiliar, but as time went on, he found comfort in the small changes. Kira's calm presence and the sound of her children's laughter had filled the space in a way he hadn't expected. Kira had proven to be a great help. Her intelligence and ability to learn quickly had made life easier. She helped with daily chores, learned how to fix small issues around the cabin, and even helped Adam maintain the power grid in his spare time. Though Adam had once preferred solitude, he found that he didn't mind her company anymore. There was something about her that made him feel less alone, less distant from the world. The children were growing stronger each day. They were still fragile, but the warmth of the cabin seemed to do wonders for them. They played quietly around the house, and when Adam wasn't working, he spent time with them, teaching them about Earth. They had a lot of questions, and although their language was difficult for Adam to understand at first, Kira helped translate. Slowly they began to form a bond. But despite the peaceful atmosphere in the cabin, there was something lurking in the distance. A threat Adam couldn't yet see but could sense growing closer with each passing day. One evening, as Adam returned from a routine check of the power grid, he noticed something unusual. The air felt different, thicker, more charged. He glanced around, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Still, the feeling gnawed at him. Something was wrong. When he reached the cabin, Kira was waiting for him at the door, her expression tense. Her children, normally playing near the fire, were now huddled together, looking anxious. "What happened?" Adam asked, his voice filled with concern. Kira didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked past him, her gaze sweeping over the horizon as if searching for something. Finally, she spoke, her voice low but steady. "They are coming," she said simply. "The ones who destroyed my home. They know I am here." Adam's stomach dropped. "Who are they?" "A faction from my home world," Kira explained, her eyes narrowing. "They don't take kindly to those who leave. They want me back, and they'll stop at nothing to get me." "Are they dangerous?" Adam asked, his mind racing. He had heard stories of alien factions before, powerful, ruthless groups that would do anything to maintain control over their people. But hearing about one up close, especially one that had already destroyed Kira's home, was unsettling. "They are not just dangerous," Kira replied, her voice colder now. "They are merciless. They will take what they want by force if necessary." Adam felt a chill run down his spine. He had never been involved in a situation like this before. His life had been simple, quiet. But now it seemed like everything was changing at once. The peaceful life he had built here was suddenly in danger. Kira's children, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, moved closer to her, their large eyes wide with worry. Adam could see the fear in their faces. Fear that he hadn't expected to see in the children of someone so strong and resilient. "We need to leave," Kira said, her voice firm. "We cannot stay here. It's not safe for any of us." Adam's mind raced. Leave? He had no intention of running, not without a fight. But he couldn't let Kira and her children face this threat alone. He had made a promise to protect them, and he intended to keep that promise. "I won't run," Adam said, his voice determined. "We'll stand our ground." Kira seemed to hesitate for a moment, studying him as if trying to gauge whether he truly understood the danger. Then she nodded slowly. "Then we will fight," she said softly. "But we will need to prepare." The next few days were a blur of activity. Adam and Kira worked together to reinforce the cabin, setting up defenses as best they could. Adam was no soldier, but he knew how to use basic tools, and that was enough for now. Kira, though she was not a fighter by nature, showed Adam how to make simple traps using the materials available around them. Her people, despite being peaceful, had once been trained to defend themselves when necessary. As the days passed, the feeling of impending danger grew stronger. The wind seemed to carry an unsettling hum, and at night Adam swore he could hear strange sounds on the horizon. He wasn't sure if it was his mind playing tricks on him or if the threat Kira had warned him about was drawing near. Then, one evening, as the sun began to set, the distant hum grew louder. Adam stood at the door of the cabin, looking out into the distance. Kira joined him, her eyes scanning the horizon with a practiced gaze. "They are coming," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Adam's heart began to race. He could see nothing yet, but he knew from the way Kira was acting that it was time. The threat was real, and it was almost upon them. "We need to be ready," Kira added, her tone more urgent now. She turned to gather her children, her eyes filled with determination. "Stay close, and do not let them see us." Adam nodded, stepping back inside to prepare for whatever was about to come. He wasn't sure what he was about to face, but one thing was clear. He would do everything in his power to protect Kira, her children, and the colony. As he loaded his tools and gathered what little he could use to defend the cabin, he felt a surge of adrenaline. This was no longer about survival. This was about standing up for what was right, protecting those who needed help, and fighting for a future he never imagined he'd have. And in that moment, Adam made a promise to himself. He wouldn't let Kira's children suffer the same fate as her people. They had already lost too much. This time, he would fight for them all. The night stretched on, dark and quiet, as Adam stood by the door, watching the horizon. His heart pounded in his chest, his thoughts racing. Kira had told him they were coming, but now that the danger was near, he felt the weight of responsibility, heavier than ever before. Kira, her children by her side, was preparing the cabin as best as she could. She was calm, focused, and yet there was a visible tension in her every movement. Adam could see the fear in her eyes, but she was hiding it well. She was strong, but he knew that even someone as capable as her could not face this alone. The cabin, once a peaceful refuge, had become a place of fortification. Adam had set up the traps Kira had taught him, and now the door was locked tight, with heavy furniture pushed in front of the windows. There was nothing more they could do. The rest was in the hands of fate. For a moment, Adam thought about what he was about to do. He had always been a man who lived quietly, far away from conflicts, preferring to keep his head down and mind his business. But now, he was standing in the middle of a war he never asked for. He had no military training, no experience in battle. But he was about to fight for something he didn't fully understand, but knew was worth fighting for: Kira and her children. "You should get some rest," Kira said, breaking his thoughts. She had come to stand beside him, her voice soft but firm. "You won't be any good to us if you're exhausted." Adam shook his head, refusing to leave the door. "I can't sleep. Not now." Kira watched him for a moment, then gave a small, understanding nod. "I know. It's not easy, but we need to be strong. For them." She motioned to her children, who were sitting quietly by the fire. They hadn't said much, but Adam could see the worry in their eyes. They were so young, and yet they knew enough to be afraid. "We'll make it through this," Adam said, though the words didn't feel as certain as he wanted them to. "We have to." Kira didn't answer, but her gaze held his for a moment, longer than necessary, and in that brief silence, Adam realized that they had become more than just strangers thrown together by chance. They were partners in this struggle, bound by the need to survive. Kira turned to her children, speaking to them in a soft alien language that Adam couldn't understand, but he could tell that her tone was filled with love and reassurance. She had always been their protector, and now it was his turn to protect them in return. The night seemed to stretch endlessly, and Adam found himself pacing the small cabin, glancing out the window, checking on the traps, and making sure everything was in place. It wasn't long before he heard the distant sounds: footsteps, low voices, and the unmistakable hum of a vehicle engine. The invaders were closing in. "Get ready," Kira whispered, her voice low, her eyes steady. Adam's heart beat faster. As he moved into position, his mind scrambling for any plan, any way to fight back. He had never been in a situation like this before, and there was no manual on how to defend his home against an alien faction. He was relying on instinct now, on the lessons Kira had taught him and the strength he had never known he had until now. The invaders were getting closer, their footsteps loud against the rocky ground outside. Adam took a deep breath, his hands gripping a weapon he had never used before, a blaster Kira had shown him how to handle. He wasn't sure he could pull the trigger, but there was no turning back now. Kira moved quietly by his side, her body, language calm but alert. She had taught him everything she knew about survival, but there was something about the way she moved now, something colder, more serious, that made Adam realize just how much she had been through in her life. "We'll try to break through the door," Kira said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can't let them in. If they get inside, we're done." Adam nodded, gripping the blaster tighter. "We won't let them in." The minutes dragged on as the sounds grew louder. Adam's pulse raced, and the tension in the room was unbearable. Kira's children sat silently by the fire, their eyes wide and alert, waiting for their mother's guidance. They trusted her. And Adam realized they trusted him, too. He was part of their family now. The door rattled, a low, ominous sound. Adam's heart skipped a beat, but Kira was already moving, positioning herself by the windows, watching for any sign of the invaders. "Here they come," she said, her voice calm, but there was an edge to it now. "Stay low and don't let them see you." Adam crouched down, his eyes darting between the window and the door. His hands shook, but he kept his focus. He couldn't afford to mess this up. He was fighting for Kira, for her children, and for a future he never thought he'd have. There was another loud bang against the door. Adam's breath caught in his throat. He wasn't ready for this. He hadn't been prepared to fight, but he didn't have a choice. The invaders were coming, and he was the only one who could stop them. Kira moved swiftly, her eyes locked on the door as the invaders tried to force their way in. The tension was unbearable. Then, just as the door creaked under the pressure of the attack, Kira turned to Adam. "Now," she said. Adam didn't hesitate. He raised the blaster, aimed it at the door, and fired. The shot echoed through the room, loud and clear. The invaders outside paused for a moment, and then a shout rang out. Kira's eyes flashed with determination, and she was already moving to the next position, signaling Adam to follow her lead. The battle had begun, and Adam knew that this was just the beginning. But in that moment, as he stood beside Kira, ready to defend his home and the family he had never expected, he felt a deep sense of purpose. No matter what came next, he would stand by her side. Together, they would face whatever the world threw at them. The air was thick with tension as Adam and Kira took cover behind the cabin's thick stone walls. The sound of heavy footsteps and the unmistakable hum of alien machinery echoed outside. The invaders had made it past the initial traps, and now they were closing in. Adam's heart raced as he peered out from behind the corner of the cabin, watching the shadows of the enemies move closer. Kira stood beside him, her eyes sharp and focused. She was in her element now, calm, steady, and determined. Her people had once been trained to defend themselves, and she had taught Adam everything she could. But this was different. The invaders weren't just coming for her, they were coming for everything she had built with the humans. And she wouldn't let them take it away. "We have to hold them off a little longer," Kira whispered, her voice steady despite the growing threat. "Once the sun sets, we'll have the advantage. They can't see in the dark as well as we can." Adam nodded, his fingers tightening around the blaster in his hands. He had never imagined himself in a situation like this, fighting to protect not only his life, but the lives of Kira and her children. The colony, the peaceful place he had known, had become a battleground. But now, it was more than just about survival. It was about standing up for the future. The door of the cabin rattled. Again, as the invaders tried to break it down, Adam's eyes widened. This was it. They had no more time to prepare. They had to fight. "Get ready," Kira said, her voice calm but filled with urgency. She moved to the window and peeked outside, scanning for any sign of the enemy. "They're coming." Adam stepped back, trying to stay out of sight while keeping an eye on the approaching invaders. He could hear their voices now, harsh, guttural, alien. The language was unfamiliar, but the tone was unmistakable. They were getting closer, determined to break through. A loud crash echoed from the front of the cabin, and Adam's heart skipped. A beat. The invaders were at the door. Without hesitation, Kira moved quickly to the other side of the room, pulling Adam into position. "We make our stand here," she said, her voice low. "No matter what happens, we don't let them in." Adam's mind raced as he checked the blaster, making sure it was ready. The weight of the weapon in his hands felt both comforting and terrifying. He wasn't sure he could pull the trigger, but he had no choice. They couldn't lose. The first invader appeared at the window, his dark form illuminated by the faint light of the setting sun. He was big, taller than Adam, with armor that looked as though it could withstand a heavy blow. Adam's heart pounded in his chest as the invader raised a weapon, aiming straight at the cabin. But Kira was faster. She raised her blaster and fired a shot that struck the invader square in the chest. The enemy soldier fell back, his weapon clattering to the ground. The rest of the invaders outside shouted in surprise and began to move quickly, trying to find another way in. "Stay low," Kira whispered, her voice steady as ever. "They'll try to surround us." Adam crouched down beside her, his eyes scanning the room for any other threats. His thoughts were racing, but Kira's calm presence kept him grounded. He could see the fear in her eyes, but it was mixed with something else, something stronger. A sense of purpose. She wasn't just protecting herself anymore. She was protecting the people she had come to care for, and she would do whatever it took to keep them safe. Another invader appeared at the door, this time trying to force it open. Adam aimed his blaster at the lock and fired, hitting the mechanism and causing the door to burst open. The invader stumbled back, surprised by the sudden attack. Adam took his chance and fired, hitting the invader in the chest. The enemy soldier fell, dead before he hit the ground. But there were more. The invaders were relentless, coming from all directions. Adam could hear them moving around the cabin, trying to find weak spots, trying to break through. Every sound, every movement kept him on edge. "We can't hold them off forever," Adam said, his voice tight with fear. "We don't have to," Kira replied. "We just need to buy time until the colony comes. They've been notified. They'll send help." Adam nodded, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He had to trust Kira. She knew what she was doing. He had to believe that help was on the way, that they wouldn't be alone for much longer. The invaders came in waves, each one more determined than the last. But with each wave, Adam and Kira pushed back harder, each shot more precise, each trap more effective. The cabin was now a battleground. Adam had never felt more alive, more focused than he did in those moments. Every movement, every action, felt like it could mean the difference between life and death. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the invaders began to hesitate. The shadows grew longer, and Adam could see that their movements were becoming less coordinated. Kira had been right. The invaders couldn't see as well in the dark, and that gave Adam and Kira the upper hand. But just as they thought they had gained some ground, a loud explosion shook the cabin. The door that had been barricaded with furniture flew open, and in rushed a group of invaders, their weapons raised. Adam fired, but the force of the blast had knocked him off balance. He missed his shot. Kira reacted instantly, pulling him behind a nearby wall for cover. "Stay low," she hissed. Adam's mind raced. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but there was no turning back. He had to fight, or they would lose everything. Then, just as the situation seemed hopeless, a loud roar echoed through the air. Adam turned to see the colony's defense team arriving, led by the colony's commander. The troops had come, just like Kira had said. The tide turned in an instant. With reinforcements arriving, the invaders were quickly overwhelmed. Adam and Kira fought side by side, their teamwork flawless. The invaders, realizing they were no longer in control, began to retreat, leaving the cabin in ruins behind them. After the battle, the cabin was quiet. The invaders were gone, their retreating footsteps fading into the night. Adam and Kira stood in the aftermath, their bodies bruised and exhausted but victorious. The colony's defense team had been quick to act. and with their help, the invaders were no match. Adam took a deep breath, his pulse finally beginning to slow. He had survived. They had survived. As Kira turned to him, her eyes filled with gratitude, he realized just how much she had become a part of his life. This fight, this battle, had not only changed their lives, it had brought them closer together. "We did it," Kira said, her voice soft but filled with pride. Adam nodded. "We did." The sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow across the landscape. The battle was over, but the scars of the fight remained. Adam stood at the edge of the cabin, looking out at the destruction. The invaders had retreated, but the cabin had been damaged, and the once peaceful colony now felt like a war zone. Yet, despite everything, there was a sense of relief in the air. They had survived. Behind him, Kira and her children were gathered around the fire, their faces marked with exhaustion but also a quiet pride. Kira had not only kept them alive, but she had also helped defend the colony, something Adam could never have done alone. He turned to look at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. She caught his gaze and gave him a small, knowing smile. "We made it," she said, her voice soft but filled with relief. Adam nodded, but his mind was still racing. The fight had been intense, and he had never imagined himself in a situation like that. But now that it was over, he realized that everything had changed. His life, which had once been so quiet, had been completely transformed, and he wasn't sure how to feel about it. "I don't know how to thank you," Adam said, his voice heavy with emotion. "You saved all of us. You saved me." Kira shook her head. "You did just as much to protect us. We fought together, Adam. We are a team." Adam smiled, but the weight of what they had been through was still heavy in his chest. He looked down at the ground for a moment, lost in thought. He had always been a loner, someone who kept his distance from others. But now, surrounded by Kira, her children, and the rest of the colony, he realized that maybe that wasn't the way he was meant to live. Maybe, just maybe, there was something more to life than isolation. Kira seemed to sense his thoughts. She stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to be alone anymore," she said, her voice gentle. "You've already become part of my family." Adam's breath caught in his throat. Part of her family? The words felt strange, but also comforting. For the first time, he realized that the connection he had with Kira was more than just survival. It was something deeper, something real. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," Adam admitted, his voice uncertain. "I've always been alone. I've always kept to myself." Kira smiled softly. "It's okay. You don't have to change overnight, but just know, you are not alone anymore. I'm here, and my children are here. You have a place with us if you want it." Adam looked at her, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never thought he would be in a situation like this, standing beside an alien woman and her children, offering them protection, and in turn, being offered something he had never known he needed: a family. "I want it," he said quietly. "I want to be with you. With all of you." Kira's eyes softened, and for a moment, they simply stood there, looking at each other, understanding passing between them. The fight had been hard, but it had also brought them closer together in a way Adam hadn't expected. He didn't know what the future would hold, but one thing was certain: he wasn't going to face it alone. The next few days were spent repairing the cabin and securing the colony. With the invaders gone, the people of the colony came together to rebuild. There was a sense of unity now, a feeling that they had all been through something extraordinary and had come out stronger because of it. Adam found himself working side by side with Kira, fixing the damage that had been done to the cabin. The tasks were simple, but as they worked together, Adam felt a sense of peace he had never experienced before. Kira's presence was steadying, and the sound of her children's laughter in the background made the work feel less like a burden and more like a shared effort. In the evenings, they would sit around the fire, eating meals together and talking. Adam began to learn more about Kira's past, the struggles her people had faced, the sacrifices they had made to survive. He was amazed by her strength and resilience, and he found himself admiring her more with each passing day. Her children, though still young, had begun to trust Adam. They would play near him, asking questions about Earth and the world he came from. Their innocence reminded him of the life he had once wanted, a life of simplicity, of quiet moments shared with those he cared about. He realized as he spent more time with Kira and her children that maybe this was the family he had been searching for all along. As the days turned into weeks, the colony began to heal. The defense team had been instrumental in pushing the invaders out, and with their help, the colony was stronger than before. Kira had become a trusted leader within the community, her wisdom and experience guiding them as they rebuilt their lives. Adam, once an outsider, now found himself fully integrated into the colony, working alongside Kira to ensure that it thrived. One evening, as Adam sat by the fire with Kira, her children playing nearby, he realized something that made his heart swell with emotion. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was home. "I never thought I would find this," Adam said softly, his gaze fixed on the fire. "A family, a place to belong." Kira smiled, her eyes warm with understanding. "You've always had a place here, Adam. You just had to find it." He turned to her, his heart full. "I'm glad I found you." "I'm glad you did too," she replied, her voice soft and filled with affection. Adam knew that this was only the beginning. The future was still uncertain, and there would be challenges ahead. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid. He wasn't alone. Together, they would face whatever came next, because they were no longer just survivors. They were a family.